It's time for Guest Lounge 2.0, and I'm glad that you think I sound good because I am so starstruck right now. So I'm going to try and keep it together for the benefit of for the benefit of our listeners. I'm definitely going to keep it together. But the man joining me in studio is a man you have not lived until you've had a conversation with, okay? Do connect with us on the socials. We are Hope Alive Radio Station on Facebook at Hope Alive _radio on X. And that good number you should have saved by now, our WhatsApp line 067 1531089. Zolani Zonyane. Oh, mhlobo wami. Good morning.
Hey, good morning to you and good morning to, I'll say, our listeners.
Yes.
And our community, because
Yes.
that's what we're all about.
Absolutely. Welcome to the show. It's been a long time coming. You know by now that I am a great follower of the work that you have been doing, because if there's one thing that is evident, it's accountability through the work that you do online. And, you know, we speak about Twitter warriors and people just talking and no action, but you have showed up in so many ways. I could go on and on, but let's get into the show. Thank you so much for making the time to be here with us this morning. For the benefit of our listeners, you've got quite a long profile that would also take us the whole day if we got into. But in a couple of words, what does Zolani Zonyane do?
Firstly, let me wish the show belated happy second.
Yeah! You can stay. You can stay, Mhlobamai. You can stay.
Okay. What I'm all about, in summary, it's, I'll say, the public service.
Yes,
Serving the people, contributing towards ensuring that we've got a better society, but with a key focus on my side on, I'll say, municipal operations.
Yes.
On how municipalities are serving our people, whether they are delivering on their mandate, because they've got a great mandate in terms of, it's a core mandate in the delivery of basic services.
True.
Which is really clearly stipulated in the Constitution. That's what they exist for.
Yeah.
But whether they do that, I think it's going to be part of our conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. So let's get straight into it. A lot of the work that you do, I mean, you mentioned municipality, so that already speaks to local government and governance. Perhaps to start our conversation, you could distinguish for our listeners, what is government and what is governance?
Government, I always try to simplify it in this way. As I've indicated, if we talk municipalities, they are business. In terms of our government makeup, we've got national government, we've got local government, and provincial government in between. And I'm mentioning provincial government last because of many other reasons, which might be a conversation
on their own.
on its own.
Right.
So government itself, they've got different roles and responsibilities.
Yes.
In the main, national government, it's about developing or lawmaking, developing legislation and ensuring that everything that needs to be done is done to give effect to those legislations. And one of the key areas is the revenue raising that then gets allocated through the three spheres of government.
Okay.
Beyond that, and the functions are clearly stipulated also in the Constitution to say what does national government do, provincial government do, and the local government.
Yes.
Now, zooming into local government itself in the business of delivering basic services, I always say you haven't really understood a municipality or local government if you don't see that sphere of business, of government as a business. In which sense, I've already said, their core mandate, delivery of basic services, boom. How do they then begin to do that? We've got three, in any other business, there are three key critical, I would say, structures. Your shareholders, which really is the genesis of it.
Yeah.
Me and you, in a local government space, we are those shareholders as citizens.
Right.
You've got the board. in any corporate entity, the council in a municipal setup is that particular board. Then you've got your team led by your executives. In the case of a municipality, your accounting officer and municipal manager that fulfill that particular, I would say, structure. Then the functioning. Me and you have got a responsibility to ensure that the board does what it does, which is the council. The council has got that role and mandate from me and you to ensure that the administration actually delivers on these basic services.
Yeah.
That then becomes the core function of that structure, which then begins to lean towards the governance that we are talking about, because that's the governance structure.
Okay.
Within that structure, there are various functions, like you go to departments
Right.
within the municipality
Yes,
now.
yes.
There are specific requirements for each of them in following laws and regulations, ensuring that the institution functions. If one of them is not functioning, nothing else will function.
Hey, and I'm curious to know which one of them is functioning at this point, because as long as we are alive. I like the fact that you clarified that the shareholders are the citizens, because when we speak local government, there's just this narrative that residents of communities have just pulled back or are disengaged from local government structures and in many instances processes. From where you sit, what is the state of local government in South Africa?
Sure. I'll try to summarize it by referring to 5 key recent reports that will give probably an overview.
Of course.
Even before I just mention them, if you look at each of those reports, they will tell you what is the state of local government. Even if you know or have heard one of them, when you go to the other 4, you'll get the same thing. There is a review that was done by the National Department of Cooperative Governance. That report came out about in 2021. It was more looking on a 20-year review of local government. The second report that I think every one of us is aware of, the Auditor General's report.
Yes.
Of, I'll say, 2021-2022, which also National Treasury, in its business, they develop state of local government reports, but focusing on finances. But the report that came out in 2023, that focused on the analysis of the Auditor General's audit report, it was a linkage to that AG report, but also just providing a detailed analysis of those particular outcomes,
Right.
linking to the financial situation in municipalities. In 2023, Ratings Africa, normally they publish what they call a Municipal Financial Sustainability Index.
Okay.
And as recent as the previous month, Good Governance Africa, in terms of the its governance performance index. All those reports point to a failure in governance. But what we tend to do, and we have been accustomed to that, to say the problems in municipalities are financial problems. I always argue against that, to say that is a symptom of a deeper problem.
Yeah.
Now, if you come up with solutions targeting the finance part of the problem, you'll never win, because deep-rooted, we talk of leadership failures, the issue of state capacity and capability, the skills that we have within broadly the public service.
Yeah.
If you don't deal with those issues, you can come up with best solutions to deal with financial issues, but will never win.
Sure. 21 minutes after 8 right here on Hope Alive Breakfast. If you've just tuned in, you are right on time for the Guest Lounge 2.0. And joining me in studio is a man, like I said, you should definitely make sure you meet at least once in your life, and have a minute worth of conversation. We are going to take a breather. When we come back, we continue with Mr. Zolani Zonyane. Welcome back. You are still tuned in to Hope Alive Breakfast right here on Hope Alive Online Radio. Make sure that you share the streaming link with your loved ones so that they can become part of the conversation. It's www.hopealiveradio.co.za. You're more than welcome to connect with us and be part of the conversation on our socials. We are at Hope Alive _radio on X, on Facebook. We are Hope Alive Radio Station. And of course, our WhatsApp number is 067 1531 089. You know, Zolani, every time I hear the word failure, I become very numb because it's a word that has been thrown around a lot, especially in this democratic dispensation. And unfortunately, it's our reality. And I'm scared. The last thing I want to be as a citizen is numb. Because when there are issues, we should always find ways to, be active and come up with solutions. But like you said, if we are only going to come up with solutions to treat symptoms, then we are not really addressing the issue. Thank you for painting the picture for us as far as the state of local government is concerned. There's a classic example of how communities can engage local government, and that is through things like IDPs. I know other municipalities have already released their dates. I've seen Ekurhuleni has released theirs. There's one that is going to be happening this very soon in Alberton or Benoni. I stand to be corrected. What's the importance of IDP meetings, and why should community members leave their homes in the midst of load shedding in some instances and attend these IDP meetings?
I think to start with, in addressing that area of interest, there's one, I usually call it fundamental error that happened post-1994. That spirit that existed from community-based, I would say, organizations, individuals like you and me, it somehow died. And the reason for that, it was more us being so optimistic that the leaders that were coming in then will basically serve our interest.
Sure.
Now, there ought to have been what I usually call some sort of a debrief to say we are transitioning to this era. You still have a role to play. Specifically, because if you talk about accountability, for an example, I spoke about shareholders, me and you, and the listeners, and other civil society organizations, your NGOs, your business forums, and you name it. We've got a responsibility to ensure that that member of the board, the council, does what we expect out of him.
Right.
That doesn't happen.
Ooh. And that's our role as shareholders.
As shareholders, it's our role to say, no, come here.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need answers.
Yes.
It's not happening for so many reasons. Firstly, it's the awareness and empowerment of, I will say, the majority of citizens in terms of how to deliver that particular function.
Right.
Secondary to that, you've got the councillors themselves who are not so aware of their role and how to execute it. To a point where I can excuse an ordinary person when we talk about government or even a municipality. We refer to it as something else that we are not part of. But to listen to a public representative when talking about government, it's like government this, but excluding me.
Right, right.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
Now, getting to the IDP, it was good that I give this, I'll say, understanding because it becomes critical in the IDP process. Because the integrated development plan itself is an outcome of an integrated development plan process, which then says, and it starts from the local government white paper that was published in 98, which is the Bible of local government. Yes, it has got its flaws in various areas. But when it comes to the IDP part of it, it's clear that you ought to go to the communities, engage with them, get their priorities, what are their needs, so that you are in a position as the administration and the council now, through various committees, you allocate resources to address those priorities. That critical phase, it's between September and I will say November of each year. It's a cycle that keeps on repeating itself. In many cases, that doesn't happen. The reason, you've got councillors which we all agree that capacity-wise, they've got shortcomings.
True.
They don't have the technical support for them to confidently interface with their communities, for them to be able to get that real understanding from me and you, not what they think we need at that particular level.
True. And I just want to throw it in here that I've been to a couple of IDP meetings, and more often than not, it would feel as though they are announcement meetings more than they are engagement meetings. Community members come and they sit in the hall. Sometimes councillors don't show up. There is no consequence. And whoever takes platform will then say, okay, so for this ward, we have allocated this much for this particular department. And community...
Informed by what?
And community members just sit there, others in shock, others are just there because, well, we didn't have anything to do, so we are here and we have been, mobilized to be here. It's just become such a
tick box exercise.
One where, even as a young person, I sit there and wonder, what exactly are we doing here?
Then the question becomes, what do people like me and you do, on one hand, to, I'll say, empower the councillors?
Okay.
On the other hand, to empower the citizens. Because there is that high expectation that we should be able to easily navigate these complex documents. It's a problem for an ordinary person. It's a problem for, I'll say, majority of councillors.
True.
Now, in that situation, you are somehow outsourcing that key function only to the administration, who will then, in the absence of any priorities that come through that first phase of the process, they will apply their own thinking and understanding of what we need without really being informed by what my councillor and your councillor will come and say. I've spoken to my constituency, this is what they say. And beyond that, how do I then begin to take that confidently and argue for those priorities in council? Those things don't happen.
Sure.
Now, culminating from that first phase of the process, that's where between December and until March, those technical or technocrats, your council committees that are responsible for now ensuring that resources are allocated to these particular priorities, they do all that work to come up with a budget. That's the budget that gets tabled by the end of March, which is now the second phase that we are entering in of the IDP process.
Right.
For us to be able, an IDP for implementation by the start of the next year.
And like you said, it has become a tick box exercise in some way. For some community members that I have engaged with, I would ask them to say, why are you going to the IDP meeting? They would say to me, no, I just want to know where the money is going. It's like a community budget speech kind of gathering. And this leads me to my next question, to say, how can we as shareholders, how can community members meaningfully participate and engage the IDP process? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this, Zolani. There's a sentiment in communities that because I don't belong to a particular political party, my voice as just a regular citizen will not be heard. I have to be affiliated for me to be heard. So how can community members meaningfully participate? Because this is an important process.
Absolutely.
It is, especially now because it's ahead of elections. How do we do that?
It starts again with what we call professionals. As to how do we begin to contribute?
Okay.
One, providing the empowerment I spoke to in terms of we know and understand what is the situation on the ground.
Yes.
How do we then close that gap? Because in terms of building that capacity of councillors, for an example, if they do not get the technical support from the administration, which I argue that will be happening.
Right.
Then if people like me and you don't then come in to say, how do we bridge the gap? Empowering both the citizens where we can and the councillors, and not only empowering but supporting. Because it might be difficult for you to take, for an example, a budget document of City of Ekurhuleni. Because of it's a massive document. That's where you'll get your IDP, your budget, your policies, and you don't know where to start.
Yeah.
The question is, how do I come in? Because I know what type of information you need.
Yes.
And where you are going to get that particular information.
Yes.
How do I then decode those complex documents to make them simple for you? So that as you go to that meeting, at least you know from these documents that have been tabled, this relate to my own ward. These are the projects that are earmarked for the next 3 years. And you take those, then you look at your own situation. Are they addressing the realities on the ground?
Yeah.
In the absence of that, we'll never win.
And language does become another barrier, because yes, I can look for the document online and find it, but the legal terminology on the first page might just throw me off. Other people don't even like the table of contents. You're just thinking, you're figuring It's 33 minutes after 8 right here on Hope Alive Breakfast. You are tuned into Guest Lounge 2.0, and joining me in studio is Zolani Zonyane. We are talking all things local government. Now, the date of the IDP meeting in your community might have been released. Do yourself a favor, make sure that you attend, but also take notes from this conversation, because then you will understand why you need to go. Zolani, in wrapping up our conversation, let's talk about active citizenry. We are tired as a country. We are tired, and we are grateful to have people like you that will constantly remind us on Twitter and on other mainstream media platforms to say, this is the role you can play as a community member. We are tired of reporting potholes. We are tired of reporting cables that have been stolen. We are not following up on processes. We are calling, but we are not being answered. Our emails are not being responded. How do we keep active citizenry alive in the midst of all this?
On its own, it's not something that is difficult.
Okay.
I'm saying that because if you start with your immediate environment, you made an example of potholes, electricity issues, water issues. And with Ekurhuleni, with the clean audit for the previous number of years, service delivery is not really something that they are good at.
True.
Now, if you are able to know, okay, fine, I don't have access to my councillor. And many people don't know that you can write directly to the executive mayor. You can write directly to the city manager.
Yeah.
And all the other, I would say, committees, or even the director, I would say technical services, in terms of voicing out that which is a pain to you. That we don't know, even when we do, to actually have that confidence to say, staff the councillor, he or she is not helping, let me rather take this particular route. That does not happen. It's not happening because councillors, as I've indicated earlier, on that interface between them and us as communities. True. Because that's where all these things should be discussed. Because by law, every quarter, at least the councillors must interface with their communities.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Sure. Why? It goes back to the reports that they sit with, some of them can't even comprehend. When you meet with citizens, the idea is to give them feedback on how the city, I'll say Ekurhuleni, is performing in this case. Then we engage based on that. Now, that activism, it becomes difficult because, as you've indicated, and we spoke earlier on to say, we somehow pressed a pause button and trusted our political leaders for them to do good for us, which is not happening. Now, as we start to realize that there is anger involved because things are not happening, we end up destroying the very same infrastructure that is already there. And again, that lack of knowledge that those are our assets as shareholders. Looking after them, it's our responsibility. Ensuring that if there is something wrong, let me be the first to report that which is wrong, service delivery related and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If we don't do that and do it passionately, that's where we are missing it. But again, we are not doing it because we don't know how, or we do know how, but for you to actively engage, you need to sift through those complex documents, which becomes, I'll say, quite difficult.
Those documents are important, Zolani.
No, they are, because if you look at the IDP, that's basically the key strategic document of a municipality.
Yeah.
Let's put aside quality in some of them and whether they are targeting what they should be targeting. Now, to even take it further, there is an argument which I also hold to say the IDP itself is very short term.
It is.
5 years for someone, it might be, no, it's too long. But I always say 15 to 20 years, if there can be a strategy for each municipality that is costed, that is realistic, then as you continue to engage, you get that buy-in from the citizens to say, we know and understand the issues, but the resources at our disposal will not be able to deliver within this short space of time.
Yeah.
Now, what many municipalities will do, something that is achievable in 10 to 15 years, it will be clumped into this 5-year strategic document.
Ish.
You create an expectation.
You do.
You don't deliver, then it's a problem. If you are able to then say, let's come together, let's reason together, this is how long we need for us to resolve our problem. Let's then support each other, come on board so that to keep us on check. That will be the councillors. Similarly, the administration. Say, councillors, you've got a responsibility to play an oversight on what we do. Keep us on check. Give us pressure where pressure is required.
Give us pressure where pressure is required. They don't like that, eh? Sounds good as political rhetoric,
but then again, they don't like it because I can't give you a pressure as a city manager of Eguruleni. I might be the mayor, but if my level of understanding on what I'm pressurizing you on is flawed, I'll even think twice about giving you pressure.
Oh my goodness, Zolani, we have run out of time. But your parting shot just on, local government in South Africa and active citizenry, because really at the heart of the conversations that we are having as a show is to encourage our community members to be active in any way possible, especially where, service delivery is concerned. Your parting shot.
Activism itself, we should not confine it, for an example, on service delivery or local government. There are so many social ills in our immediate environment.
That is
How
true.
do we begin to first notice that and take action in trying to address it as a community? It starts there.
Right.
Then as you deal with these other complex issues, it becomes easy because firstly, already you are organized. You know when you see something that is not right, what to do.
Right.
Then collectively you are able then to move as a collective to address these particular issues.
Absolutely.
That will make our municipalities function. But then again, it's a question of, as you elect this board that must go there, who do you elect? Yes, there are arguments. For an example, I know Minister of Copta is pushing for at least a minimum requirement for one to become a councillor. There are people who say constitutionally, no, that cannot be. But I think that thinking emanates from the quality that we currently have, which is not delivering on the core mandate.
Yeah.
Now, there are so many ways that we can really start to address that. Yes, people look at elections as probably one and the key mechanism of participation in the democracy itself. But I always say, how do you then follow and support that vote in between elections?
True.
It's basically through this participation, like nationally, for an example. a lot of bills, before they become an act of parliament, they get published for
Sure.
us to comment.
Yes.
We don't do that because either we don't know that those documents are out. Even when we do, it also gets to, you spoke about language earlier on, and that's when now people like Mnanawe should come in to say, to decode this document for you, these are the key things that you need to look out for. This is the purpose of this document and how you can best interact with. But then again, what gives us, I'll say, more power, it goes back to elections. Because if you know and understand, be it your public representatives at national and provincial government or even at local government, those people are elected by you and me. They don't elect themselves.
Right.
Then it's how then you protect your vote in between to say, if I elected you, I should demand A, B, and C.
Yeah.
That's where then accountability in itself, it should be from the council, I'll say, to the communities. But now we are in that situation where we must demand accountability, which will not be the case. But then that's where we are playing our role to say, if you fail to come to us, we'll take the fight to you.
Yeah.
For you to be able to give us the answers that we want.
Yeah.
But as I close, let's go and vote come the 29th of May.
Sure.
That's the only way. Yes, we are talking local government, but it starts with the national and provincial elections. And through that participation, we then lay a good baseline for the 2026 local government elections.
Yeah.
The type of leaders that we'll have. Because with many reforms that are being put through, those reforms will create a fertile ground for 2026 local government elections. But let's start to participate in the democratic processes. Then we protect our votes through ensuring that if we don't get accountability, we demand accountability.
Zolani Zonyane, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us. It does sound like we are going to have to bring you back. We need an hour-long conversation because this is very important. But this has been insightful. Thank you so much for spending the morning with us. How can people connect with you on the socials? Because you are very active on there. And the content you share also is very educational. How you engage different people on there can give one an idea of how they can also start to, play their role as a citizen.
On X Twitter, which is currently X.
Elon!
It's at ZSS Zonyane. Then you go to LinkedIn. You can just search for my name, Zolani Zonyane. But also the handle there is ZSS Zonyane. Also on Facebook, you can search the same, or either my name and surname, or ZSS Zonyane.
Thank you so much. We're truly honored to have had you. It is 15 minutes before 9. Let's get straight into In Concert With.